All right. Welcome to the 1111 show. This is the show where you look at your phone at 1111 and see our show. I'm actually thrilled to be joined today by one of my good friends who I met a long time ago when I first got into this industry, and the CEO of Hanu Labs, the inventor of the VapeXhale vaporizer, all the way from the West Coast. I mean, this guy's got everything going on that you can imagine. Dual CEO roles. He's home with the children. He's also got his podcast. He's doing martial arts and he's doing technology. I want to welcome Seibo Shen to the show. What's up, Seibo? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Awesome, man. You got great audio over there, man. You got some setup over there.
You know, it's only a $60 microphone, but I did some YouTube research and found that this $60 Maono is as good as these Audio Technica ones. So, you know, trying to ball on a budget. You sound great too.
I hear you. This one was actually only 40.
Well, you done me a little bit better.
We got to do it what we got, you know. You got that
totally
background going on over there. What are you at the beach?
I am at the beach. You know, I just set up outside, get some fresh air. Nah, you know, everyone got the crazy Zoom backgrounds, right? So I figured I'll jump in the mix as well.
It's funny, they had a hearing here, right? A Supreme Court hearing for legalization actually in Florida. And the backgrounds, there was a virtual hearing and the backgrounds were the courtrooms. So it looked like they were like in the courtrooms and you could watch it live. It was pretty hilarious. The government being done this way.
No, totally. I mean, we are definitely living in a new world, you know, like I think everyone's become a broadcaster now too. Congratulations. How long you been doing this show now?
We've actually been doing this. This show in particular, we just started, but we've been doing the 710 morning show now since I think September, August. So we've been doing it for quite some time. And now everybody else seems to be jumping on and doing a lot of streaming and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see it kind of coming mainstream. And, you know, the downward up the nose camera angle is becoming really popular, you know, television, which is hilarious.
Yeah, I feel like we're doing a pretty good job here. We got the eye level angle, you know, no one's seeing up our noses. My skin is looking a little green today. I'm not too sure why, but you know, could be the fluorescent lights.
Yeah, we've got like the ring lights and stuff going. It's funny how like all of a sudden you couldn't find a camera in the store. You couldn't find like lighting. Everybody was buying all that stuff up.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty cool. You know, I think ever since I was little, this wasn't like an explicit dream of mine, but I think I'm like slowly discovering, like, I did want to be a broadcaster at some point, you know, like, so now I got an excuse to actually give it a try and have some fun with people, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you've been doing this. You've been doing a podcast for a little while too, no?
Yeah, but you know, like when I did the podcast, there was no intention of like amplifying it or monetizing it and like having like a ton of people reading. You know, it really was just, I mean, I don't want to say like this is kind of like my life pattern, but like, you know, I just try to do shit that I like to do, you know, like even like designing the vaporizers, you know, like when we started designing them, it had nothing to do with like, you know, what's the margins or, you know, how many of these could we sell or, you know, what's the price point that's going to make it like a niche product versus a mainstream product. You know, it was just like, hey, what's the thing that I want to make, and I'm going to make it for myself, and other people like it. Great. If they don't, well, you know, I'll go back to the drawing board. But, you know, for better or for worse, that's been my kind of attitude towards things. And, you know, and I think, you know, especially when you're doing anything artistic, like I always think like, yeah, you know, if you're starting a podcast to try and make money, you know, nothing wrong with that, but I love to speak my mind, you know, and then whenever I think about money and then there's like money on the line based on what I say, then I feel like I start censoring myself, right? So like for the podcast, it was very much like it had nothing to do with the business or any of the entrepreneurial activities. It was just an outlet for me to express myself honestly. And kind of get out of the rigmarole of being an entrepreneur that's always living in his head, thinking about the future, analyzing past data. And one of the things that I've come to realize is like, especially with anxiety and depression, like very few people suffer from anxiety and depression in the present moment when they're present. Typically they go into this is like when they start thinking about a future that hasn't happened, or they're reconciling a past that they haven't, put to rest, right? And then they have like all of this stuff going on in the mind, which is why I think it's very important to tap into flow state, either through meditation or through some sort of, even through podcasting. I feel like this is one of the areas where I get into flow state, which is I'm here with you, Pete. I'm focused on you. I'm not looking at any of the comments, and I'm just here with you to have a conversation. And, I feel like that's something that, especially in the day of social media, you're like, you post a picture, and instead of going on with your day, and I'm talking about my nieces, nephews, and myself, is post a picture. Then you end up going back to Facebook or Instagram and just checking how many likes you have. And it's just like this huge distraction to take you out of the moment. So I think with COVID-19, I've been really working on just being there for my family, being there for the people that I'm interacting with, and just putting the fucking phone down so we could be engaged and be present.
I understand. I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, dwelling on the moment is something that I think that has really been lost. And I think we lose it more and more for exactly the reasons that you just said, that we get stuck in our phones. The immediate reaction is when we see something we like is to take a picture of it, as opposed to just be in that moment and enjoy it. And there's a lot of stuff that says like once we take a picture of it, it doesn't last in our memory the same way as it would as if we're like being in that moment. And finding that flow state is, something that's, I found in fitness, like kind of, working out and stuff. I can get into that. And then music is what really used to put me there, like playing the drums and being in that moment, because you can't be thinking about anything else. And then you just kind of, or else you're not going to play very well. So it's, I think it's something that people really need to focus on a lot more. I'm really glad that you brought that up. That's something that's, I think, really important, especially with the depression and the anxiety, right? They say depression is thinking about, regretting the past, and anxiety is thinking about the future and what could happen. And living in the moment seems to be the antidote for both of those things.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is I think that we've gotten to a point where it's such a intellectual thing for us, and like being strategic is like so important that like living in our heads has, I think, disproportionately become the way that society rewards us. The most strategic person, or even strategy, sometimes turns into shystiness, right? Like if it has like kind of like a negative bend to it. But I've been really working on this because having children, one of the things I realize is like when I travel and I come back, or I'm super busy, like I can be there physically with my children, but many times my mind is on work, is on other things. And, like it's interesting because when they're trying to get my attention and I'm on my cell phone or on my laptop and I give them my attention, and then they just keep coming back like every 10, 15 minutes. And what I realize is when I just get off the computer and hang out with them for 5 minutes, that's all they need. They need 5 minutes of undivided, engaged attention from dad, not like 2 hours of dad being on the laptop and then them coming and me giving some of my time to them. And that's why like I really stress the importance of being in flow. And I think for a lot of people, I think a lot of people have forgot like what flow is in. So I've been thinking of different analogies to help people get back into flow. And I love consuming cannabis and doing crazy shit like doing flips and doing jujitsu. And the reason I could do that is cannabis puts me in flow. I'm not in my head. I'm not thinking I'm some 43-year-old whose body is going to break if I compete against this 22-year-old. I'm just like, fuck it. Like I'm in my head. This is what I want to do. And I'm going to express myself at the fullest. But one of the things that I've been trying recently, and, it's a little bit scary, but it was one of the two scariest things that I could think of being like super vulnerable and having to be in flow state if you want to do it well. That was stand-up comedy. And then the other was freestyling,
Really?
Yeah. So the first time I ever freestyled like in front of other people, I did it on Facebook Live, and there was like 30 people watching. And you know what? Everything went okay. I mean, I'm not going to go challenge Eminem or any of these guys to a rap battle or anything like that. But you know what? I didn't embarrass myself. And actually, I'm pretty proud of what happened. And the very next week, I got on this other live stream from a comedian called Josh Wolf, who used to be on like Chelsea Handler's show. And there was like a couple thousand people watching his live stream, and we had a rap battle, and I smoked him. And you know what? Like he accepted defeat. And it was one of those things where I really realized, like, even as a 43-year-old, like I put like some rules around like what I can or cannot be, you know, and one of them was a rapper, you know, and all of a sudden, because of COVID-19, here I am rapping against people on the internet. And like, that was such a wonderful feeling to just get out of my head, just to get all those little voices of like, you know, all the quote unquote people that would be judging me. Who are these people? You know, like I thought about, okay, what if one of my employees sees me rapping? Like they're going to lose all respect for me. You know, like I had all these weird, like little voices in my head. And you know what? Everyone, all those people that were going to judge me, guess who? I mean, no one ever was. It was just me being in my head, you know? So I realized like the person putting me in that prison was myself, you know, and being able to free yourself from that mental prison has been just awesome. And something like, I really hope like, you know, my daughters have come online and just freestyled with me too. So it's been really cool to like pass that along to, you know, the next generation. And yeah, and hopefully, you know, we can start experiencing things, being in the moment. And it's okay if we don't post it on Instagram, because that was a moment for us, you know, not for everyone else to see.
Right. That's amazing. I love that you're doing that. I love that you're taking risks and you're putting yourself out there. Man, stand-up comedy is not easy, you know, to go out there and put yourself out there like that. But then you look at you know, Rodney Dangerfield didn't start till he was in his 40s, right? So
oh, really?
It's definitely doable.
Oh shit. Yeah. Well, I got inspiration, Rodney.
Just gotta start telling one-liners.
Oh yeah, yeah. So what about you? What's been you on your end, man? It's been so long since I've spoken to you, Pete. Like, you know, you and Tom were some of the first people I met at ArcView. You know, like I automatically gravitated towards you guys. I think you guys were probably the only people that were like smoking weed at the event at that time. You know, that's why we gravitated towards each other. But you know, like it's been such a long time. I really wanted to catch up with you.
Well, you have these legendary kind of meetings at the MJ Biz show, like your investor meetings that you have in your room, which are it's the stuff of legends. Well, yeah, we met actually back in 2014 when Tom and I were in Seattle for, I think it was the Concentrates Cup, and I think Tom did his first ever dab.
Yes.
At the VapeXhale when you were at the table and you were showing us the VapeXhale. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah, Seattle Hemp Fest. Yeah. I remember Tom coming up. You know, he was, I can't remember if he was in a suit or not, but he was obviously dressed nicer than the other people. And then he was telling me about this thing that he was running in Florida. And I was just like, is this guy a narc, you know? But but he took the dab, you know, but I was like very kind of like a little bit suspicious because of how friendly he was and how willing he was to do a dab for the very first time with me, you know, but I guess I'll take it as a compliment that I made him feel comfortable enough to do his first dab with me.
And he also had me with him, which was like his bodyguard. I look like I'm his bodyguard walking around with him. So it couldn't have helped for the narc stereotype of us walking around the ArcView. I think it took a year for people to think we weren't like feds or something.
Yeah, you guys kind of had like that Men in Black vibe, I remember, you know, walking around.
It's so funny because to know us like personally was like couldn't be further from the truth.
No, totally. You know, it's funny because in ArcView, I met a bunch of guys that were wearing suits that day. So I think when you meet someone and they're wearing a suit, you automatically have an idea of how they are. And then as the months and years go by and you start seeing them outside of the suit and the way they behave, you're like, oh shit, these are just like my high school friends, you know, but they put themselves in a suit that day to kind of, you know, look a little bit more buttoned up, but everyone behaving like a 16-year-old.
That's funny. You especially remind me of my high school friends, maybe because we're the same age or whatever, but we're like, you just really remind me of like people that I hung out with in high school. So like, since we met, like they've legalized medical in Florida. Things have changed enormously in Florida. So we've got tons of different things going on. You know, the Florida Cannabis Coalition, we host events every other weekend where we were hosting events until we were on lockdown. So I've been up in front of crowds as well, like every 2 weeks, trying to make it sound fresh and stuff, and really being in front of like, small groups of people. And that's been like a real learning experience for me, because I'm not the biggest, networker, or like, the most outgoing person. So to be up in front of like groups of people all the time talking has been kind of eye-opening for me. It's been something that I've put myself out there. So that's been really kind of rewarding over the past few years. And then we've launched this stuff. We've launched a lot of the streaming stuff, which is really great. The morning show has been, really successful. I'm like super surprised. But
Yeah,
yeah,
real quick, Peter, I was curious, like, you said you weren't like the most like networky kind of like social butterfly person, but you had to put yourself out there in front of those people. I kind of feel the same way about myself, but once I got more comfortable with speaking in front of people, I found myself like really liking that part too.
yeah.
I was curious, like if you had that kind of transformation.
Well, I like that part a lot more than one-on-one stuff. Like I would rather be in front of people on stage or in front of a group, as opposed to being in a small group, like congregating back and forth. I know I'm a lot more comfortable. I think maybe it comes from playing music or whatever. I'm just more comfortable on stage, hiding behind a microphone, where I can talk and not really have to worry about being interrupted and stuff like that. But yeah, I do kind of, I like it. And then you feed off of the crowd. You know how like they talk about like how stand up, if you don't have a crowd there, it's almost impossible. It's like you have to like kind of feed off the crowd. So that's been really interesting, kind of like, you know, telling, jokes that bomb, and trying to, recover from that. And like, that's been really like an interesting thing. But yeah, I gotta say, I have grown into it more than I thought I would have.
Yeah. Well, what's cool? What you said is that, you were saying like you prefer being on stage and having a crowd versus one-on-one because it's more of like a, one-way communication. You get to tell them what's up and then they have to listen, right? But then you also said something very interesting, which was you also very much listen to them. So like if you tell a joke that, kind of rubs them the wrong way, you have to be in flow to recognize like, I'm not going to tell another liberal or another conservative joke in front of this audience because they're obviously, have different like political views or opinions on it, So in a weird way, like I do see that as, another practice of flow, which is, that the type of guy that is not in flow tells the bad joke, gets booze, and then just tells another similar bad joke because they're just so in their head like, oh shit, like they just booed. I gotta double down on my idea, versus being in flow, which is, hey, they just booed. That's okay. Let me try something different. Right. So,
Right.
And that's why I'm really finding like, meditating, being present. Like, I know it's like this foo-foo, hippie California shit, but really like it's the stuff that's really, I think, allowed me to deal with COVID a lot better because, when I do feel my worst is when I'm thinking about like the future of the nation, the future of the economy, the future of the further polarization of what's happening with people. And the good news is when I talk to people with polarizing views, to me, like I think whatever side of the fence you sit on, whether you're for quarantining or if you're for reopening the economy, like here's the one thing that everyone needs to fucking recognize, sorry for swearing, is no one wants more people to die. No one wants more people to die. Like that's 100% consistent. I think that that's the problem, is people who think that we should quarantine, the other side thinks like, oh, well, you guys are just welcoming, us getting our rights removed. And then the other people that look at the people that want, shelter in place to end, they're like, no, you just want to infect the rest of America and have everyone die. It's like, no, there's a lot of shit in the middle that is going on. And, these kind of simplistic, like binary views of like what the other people are just because of the way they think, I think is further polarizing us. And why it's so important to me is, I have relatives in Italy, Seoul, Taiwan, Singapore, Australia, in places that have handled it poorly, and then in places that have handled it very well. And one thing that's consistent is the places that handled it poorly, it's because they have a society where this is a very polarizing topic. And the areas that have handled it very well, and I don't want to say the Asian countries because I'm Asian, but like they're much more homogenous. So it's a much more collectivist society. So
Right,
yes,
exactly.
it is a little bit easier, but they did all agree. And by having people agree, whatever strategy they took, they were able to see how it plays out versus doing like a strategy 50% of the way, seeing some of the results and going, oh shit, let's try something else, right? It's kind of like when you're doing marketing programs and like, you're like, oh shit, it's not getting the amount of traction I want. Let's pull some of the budget away and try something else. When you realize like, this thing needed to run for like 6 months before you see some traction, right? So I'm not saying I know the truth. What I'm saying is let's just be nicer to each other. If someone disagrees with you, just ask them why. Don't like start like, just dumping facts down their throat, because many times like we're all looking at the same papers. We're all looking at, similar news outlets, but many of us interpret them different. And ultimately, like I said, at the end of the day, it's like if you ask them, do you want more people to die? Everyone's answer is no. Nobody wants more people to die. So if we remember that, I think we'll be a little bit more kinder to each other.
I think that's great. I really do. And there has been a lot of this divisiveness. I know I've gotten into a lot of interesting conversations on Facebook with some of the theories and stuff that people have been putting forth. And I think that you're right. I think, at the end of the day, everybody's got this common goal that we all, don't want people to die, except for Bill Gates apparently wants everybody to die. That's what I hear. So I think that if you look at people and you look at the fact that most people come with some sort of confirmation bias, that's very, very difficult for them to overcome. So say your business is very contingent upon things opening up. It's going to be very difficult for you to be objective, right? And it takes a lot of practice to do that. Like it takes, knowing your cognitive biases and like recognizing them. And most people don't even know that they exist, let alone that they have them. So you have to be empathetic towards that and understand that these people, that people think differently for different reasons, and that's helped me a lot, be more patient and, and about the whole situation.
Yeah. Well, I think that empathy part you said is very, very important, and what we need more of in this country, like I just feel like, for myself, I live in California, like there's so many Asians here, but when I go out and walk, like in the last 2 months, I've had at least 4 or 5 like negative things yelled at me, but like I kind of thought to myself, all right, like how should I react to this? And my initial instinct is I'm gonna go fucking choke this dude out, because I can do that very easily and not leave any bruises on his body. He's gonna learn his lesson. Or I could just think like, okay, like you just said, like maybe that man's business requires him to be at work, so he's just very scared and he's lashing out at someone that looks like the people that ate the bats or whatever started this virus, and like kind of thinking in that framework, not to say like that's the right framework, but it's really helped me because I don't know what people think about free will, but I've listened to like Sam Harris give his free will argument, and there's parts of me that really believes it. We're all born with a certain biology. We have different biological algorithms to release dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, yada, yada, yada. And then we have all these programmers in our lives. Everyone that we meet is like a different programmer. So based on like who you have conversations with, what countries you visited, all the people that have enriched your lives, and then you factor that in with your biochemistry of how you respond to things, then yeah, like Seibo, who was born in another country, then raised in California, that had these types of people around him influencing him. Of course he thinks this way because, if you match his biology with the things that he's heard, he's going to think this way. Much like if I was raised in the deep South and I was raised in a homogenous society that said, immigrants, this, that, or the other, like there's a high probability that like I would think the same way. We like to think that, we would be different, but in many cases, with the same upbringing, with the same experiences, we would think similarly. And when we don't, well, it's biological algorithms, right? Like some people like green, some people think that color sucks. Some people like pepperoni, some people think it tastes bad. Why is that? Well, we have different biological algorithms that tell us, this is pleasant, this is not pleasant. So in a weird way, kind of understanding that, like it's given me like a much more, I don't know how to describe it, but when I see people, I don't see them as like good or bad because of how they think. I think of them as like, this is what happens when someone is raised this way with this type of biology. And if they suck, and they're bad, negative people, in a weird way, I have a lot of empathy for them. It's like, man, like this person was raised in this way where they think everything different from them is bad. And look, all he eats is steak and potatoes, whereas I get to eat sushi, curry, all these different varieties. And yeah, in a weird way, it's really made me much more empathetic towards folks that don't think like me, or folks that have a narrow point of view. And I think that, I don't know if that's the right answer or not, but when I think about it, it makes a lot of logical sense to me. And I think Sam Harris is pretty good at, being an objective person when he breaks things down.
Yeah, I agree. I've listened to, I think, a couple of his books, and a couple of. I used to listen to more of the podcast stuff a lot more frequently. But I was actually just having this conversation with Colleen the other day about Sam Harris, and we watched one of the YouTube videos about free will, because it's it's an interesting subject to try and have a conversation about without a lot of the background about different views on free will and stuff. But it's definitely very, very eye-opening. And you're a lot of it is a huge product of your environment, just by nature of what I said before, like being the same age, you have a lot of similar things, having grown up in the same time period. You know what I mean? So you're naturally going to gravitate towards certain things, just by nature of one aspect, age, and then you can have other different cultural things. And like you said, your nature that comes first, and then it's nurtured via your environment, and creates, a lot of who you are. And a lot of that you don't have a lot of choice in. And then, I don't know, it's kind of a rabbit hole to start talking about. I love delving into it, but
well, here's two interesting analogies. One is that, because many people will say, hey, well, I put on a brown shirt today. I had the free will to put on a blue shirt. Well, I put on a brown shirt. And one of the interesting things that Sam Harris, or not Sam Harris, but I've heard other people say this, is that, you do have free will, whether or not to exercise your desires, but you don't have free will over your desires. Meaning, like, for example, like if all of a sudden, like, being gay was like the coolest thing in the world, like I couldn't just decide like Seibo wants to be gay right now, like my biology is like not that of a gay man, so like I could exercise my desire to be gay or not, but my desire to be gay, like that wasn't my choice, and it's kind of interesting. And it does really put things into, at least for me, puts things into perspective of like why we behave the way we do. And hopefully it'll give us, a framework for how to deal with people that have different ideologies than ourselves. Because in the past, when we were growing up, like the divide between conservatives and liberals was not like this. It was much more like a checks and balances system. And yeah, I'm not saying it was like the good old days of the 80s and 90s or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, like, I do remember a lot more conversation, a lot more people willing to compromise, a lot more people willing to hear a different opinion. And, I'm hoping we could get back to that, like that's why my family immigrated here, for the American dream.
I see a lot of that as a product of how media has shaped us over the past 20 or so years. I was working in media for, 15 or so years ago. 20 years ago, I started working in media. And so I worked for a radio network that actually had, we've represented Fox News, NBC News, CNN, every single news network we represented. And they would all try and position themselves in a certain way. And CNN at one point tried to position themselves right in the middle, like as moderate as you could be, not conservative, not liberal. And their ratings tanked, their advertisers started pulling. It was like, that was the writing on the wall, where it was like, you can only be polarizing if you want to get those clicks and want to get those ratings. So that's what they're doing, is they're feeding into that, because, and it's not nefarious. It's not because they have a political ideology. It's because that's where the clicks are. That's where the advertisers are. That's where the money is. They're just following the money. And as a result, you're losing the objectivity. You're putting people in echo chambers. People are only, believing stuff that's self-reinforcing about their own point of view. And then what's worse is if you engage in arguing with somebody, and I'm sure you understand this as well. If you engage in arguing with somebody, you're probably going to make them just entrench themselves further, as opposed to changing their mind, because that's what happens. It's like they try and they double down on their position and get more entrenched in it, as opposed to wanting to change their mind, because you're coming at them. And many people don't know how to, engage in those kinds of debates, myself included. I have a huge problem with trying to engage in constructive debate when some of the stuff is so outrageous to me. It's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this is a topic that's kind of near and dear to me because in clinical psychology, this term is called the backfire effect, which is whenever you have one of your core values challenged and you're given even like empirical data to show that you're incorrect. The backfire effect, as you said, people just double down on their current ideology versus going, oh shit, Pete just showed me some new info that cannabis is not this really awesome thing that we thought it was. And then I go, well, I've been in the cannabis industry for 7 years. Like, I'm doubling down. It's even better than what we were saying, And, so the backfire effect, evolutionarily speaking, it was to not question your leaders. It was to, once you have a core belief, like, you just kind of automatically stick with it. And the reason why this kind of trait has stuck with us is that if you think about like back in like hunter-gatherer stage, like if another warring tribe was coming, or if there were predators coming over the hill and your leader was like, let's get the fuck out of here, like, you can't question the leader. If you start questioning the leader, or like going, hey, let's think about like the strategy for like, should we go up the hill or down the hill or across the stream? Like, those people all died.
Right.
Those people all died. The people that didn't question, they lived, So I have this thought that like we have the biology of like, I think our biology hasn't shifted for like the last 200 or 250,000 years or so. My numbers could be a little off, but our technology in the last 200 years has fucking exploded. So, the biological match to our technology is not there. We have the biology of hunter gatherers, of resource hoarders. If you think about, what used to kill people all the time, it was famine and war. Look at how many wars are going on now. Almost zero. Most of the wars are happening internally within the countries. Look at how much famine is happening now. Yes, there are still people starving, but the amount of people that die from starving is far outweighed from the people that die from obesity. So we've solved the two biggest problems in history: war and famine. So we no longer have to be resource hoarders. We could be resource planners, but because the type A alpha male is so celebrated right now, like almost every CEO is a type A male, like these type A males were required because, like we needed to kill fucking woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers. We needed leaders to be like, hey, I'm tired of writing on a piece of paper. Let's take this shit to the cloud, right? Like, I think type A personalities were all required to kind of lead this innovation. But now that we're here, I believe this biology no longer serves us. Like when we're resource hoarding, when we have so much for everyone else, like what are we really doing? Right. Are we evolved or not? Like I kind of think of mankind right now as like, it's like giving a 15-year-old like keys to the Ferrari. He kind of knows how to drive this thing, but he don't fucking know. He don't know.
Right. No, I couldn't agree more. We have we have not caught up to our technology, or even so much as having such an abundant food supply, right? So we haven't even caught up to that. So we're still, that's why we have obesity, is because we don't know how to handle a surplus of food the way that we have it. I think that I couldn't agree with you more. I think that we're on like we're in like a transition, and I'm not really sure how we're going to catch up if technology keeps, at least advancing according to Moore's law and doubling and doubling and doubling. Like, how are we going to catch up, psychologically, physiologically, with where we're going? Are we going to, is it going to go down that path of inventing AI and then trying to, control it, as a lot of people would believe? Are we going to be, uploading consciousness? Or like, how are we going to deal with that moving forward?
Yeah, well, I think the writing is clear. When people think about like cybernetic humans, like I think a lot of people scoff at it, scoff at the idea of cybernetic humans. But, just think about the last time you left your house without your cell phone. Did you just keep going on with your day? No, you go back and you get your phone. Your phone is literally attached to you right now. It's just not attached to you. So we are already seeing like the merging of like humans and cybernetic technology, and I don't know what the future is going to hold, but, I think that we are starting to see that, like we talked about our own biological algorithms, right? There's companies right now that have run tests that have shown like they could look at 10 Facebook posts, and with 10 Facebook posts, they could guess your tendencies better than a coworker. With 25 Facebook posts, they could guess your tendencies better than your friends. With 50, they could guess them better than your parents. With 250, they can guess them better than your wife or your husband. And this is because there's two. I'm stealing a lot of Sam Harris's ideas here. Sorry, but they talk about, and I don't think this is his idea, but they talk about the experiencing self and the narrating self. So the experiencing self, a good example of that is like you're going through social media like Instagram all day, and you're enjoying like just being online and like looking at all these pictures. And then at nighttime, when you think about what you did all day, you go, oh shit, I wasted all day just scrolling through Instagram. So your experiencing self was having fun, but your narrating self was telling yourself you wasted a day. So there's kind of like this disassociation between like your memories versus how you really feel. But guess what? Guess what knows how you really feel? Every time you do a Google search, every time you go on Facebook and you scroll and you slow down and look at things, but you don't click on it. These are all things that they're learning about your tendencies. So they know your initial response, they know your secondary response, they know your tertiary response. And they could start using this information to start guiding you on like what they want you to think. And what's interesting is if you listen to this guy, Roger McNamee, who was chief of compliance and Mark Zuckerberg's mentor when they first started Facebook, was that, personalization was supposed to show you like just all the cool shit. What it's ended up doing was personalization. What it's done is, you brought this up earlier, is it puts you in an echo chamber. And this isn't like nefarious or anything. It's not to divide the country. But once you're in an echo chamber, or once you choose a side, it's so much easier to sell shit to you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he's just like, oh shit, all this customization, all this personalization that Google and Facebook has, like it's all to figure out what your tendencies are, what side you're on, so you could sell more shit to people. So Roger McNamee has been going around like really warning people like, Facebook is a problem, but we all kind of know like Facebook is customizing and doing these things. But his biggest thing is what Google is doing. Like if you type like best vaporizer in Florida and best vaporizer in California, you're not going to get the same answer.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone thinks you're going to get the same answer. So this is what's fucked up, is like when you're like, hey, I want to learn about healthcare. Then you're learning about healthcare in Georgia versus healthcare in Nevada, and you're seeing different articles, but everyone's thinking like they're getting, objective Google searches. That's when it gets scary, and you're like, holy shit, like, is this why we're so polarized right now?
We used to do some experiments with some people that I was on bulletin boards with, and we do the Google search for the same thing in different countries. This was actually a long time ago. It was shortly after 9/11, and we would search for different things and see what would come up for different people in different countries and different areas of America. And so it's been going on for quite some time. It's kind of like you said, it was to show you what you want to see and what it's turned into is showing you stuff that's going to make it easier to sell you things. And when I was actually working at Westwood One, I was working on all these different shows, right? So I was doing research for Bill O'Reilly and Laura Ingraham and Rachel Maddow at the same time. And who was the guy that became the senator who was on Air America? Who's the comedian? I can't remember his name. But anyway, I was doing all those research for liberal shows, for conservative shows, and you could see the results of it in my Google results. It's like they couldn't figure out what the hell I was because I was all over the place. So I would get ads for, Alex Jones type stuff, and I would get really, left-wing ads at the same time. So you could really see how they couldn't narrow it down because it wasn't really my personal thing. But if you go into someone's like personal, search history, it's real easy. I mean, it's almost 20 years ago that Target predicted that girl was pregnant before her parents knew. Started sending her coupons for diapers because of her shopping habits. They matched that up with all these other shopping habits of women that ended up buying diapers. 9 out of 10 women who bought all these things ended up buying diapers next, sent her coupons for diapers.
Hey, dude, Pete, this is so fucking crazy that you brought up this example. Do you know why?
Why?
Because I was the sales rep that sold Target the unstructured Twitter fire hose data for them to figure that out.
No, come on, really?
Yeah. I resold. I worked for 2 data companies, and one of them, this was back in 2012 when Twitter had their fire hose open, and they basically had access to the Twitter fire hose. So, in addition to that, like you would think the biggest companies would be these Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies, but the people that were really utilizing the data were like hedge fund managers and people like that were really looking for people that were talking about different things to utilize that data to figure out, the next trend. But yeah, the one use case that people talked about the most was when, you bought like sunglasses, like a beach hat, and then one other thing. And that would mean like there was an 85% likelihood that you were going on your baby moon. And 6 months from now, you should start sending them advertisements for Huggies, Pampers, and baby formula.
That's crazy. I mean, how far are we? I mean, considering that was what you just said, 2012. How far are we from more accurate predictive models about just other types of behavior? How far are we from Minority Report?
I don't know. Every time I talk about something and then I go onto Facebook, I see a Facebook ad for it. So I think we're there, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. I got something the other day. I was like, I can't believe I just got an ad for this. I don't even remember what it was, but it was out of the blue, something I don't normally talk about. And all of a sudden there it was. But you can, as an advertiser on the other side of things, I've always been in advertising. So I can see, you can talk to Facebook and get your ads in there. So it's not made up. You can get, those passive listening ads if you have like a Facebook rep that you talk to and stuff. It's just, you got to kind of get up there in their advertising for them to offer it.
Got it. Well, my wife just got hired at Facebook, working on some of their online commerce stuff. So maybe I will see a little bit of the secrets into Facebook land.
Can she get them to unban cannabis advertising for on Facebook or anything related to cannabis, or something that even looks remotely like a marijuana leaf doesn't get flagged and pulled down?
Oh man, I'm still surprised. Like in this day and age, I mean, for how quote unquote liberal these companies are supposed to be, they sure do have some draconian like practices.
It's bad. I mean, it's pretty bad when it comes to, we never sold anything marijuana related, anything other than a ticket to an event on Facebook, and they shut down 3 different ad accounts for us.
One of the interesting things is, okay, so like the Instagram like accounts that just get like banned all of a sudden, we were really trying to figure out like, are there certain hashtags or are there certain key phrases that, the compliance folks are keying in on? But more and more what I'm reading is, and I'm not saying this is what happened to you guys, but more and more what I'm reading is like these pages that get shut down, like influencer pages or whatever, it's typically because they got into a fight with another influencer, and then that influencer called Instagram and was like, hey, Pete is talking about mushrooms, DMT, and ayahuasca. Shut him down.
No, that's actually happened a lot here in Florida. All the dispensaries were doing that to each other. So all their pages kept getting shut down because one would complain about the other and it would get shut down. So, and that happened many times. Some of them pulled down their whole social media presence because of it.
Oh, man. Well, social media is one of those interesting things that, especially with COVID-19, I'm realizing like if you have your own digital brand and things like that, that does, give you like a lot of different opportunities and a bit more flexibility. But man, I just hate being on social media all the time. Like it really is a full-time job. So I think it's one of those things, like if I was born like maybe 20 years later, this would be like absolutely like my favorite thing to do all the time. But now I'm just kind of like, man, I got to try to act like a 20-year-old and run my business at the same time, you know?
That's so funny. I completely understand. It's so true. And then social media is like, I can't do Twitter because it takes up too much time. It's just you got to constantly be on it. So I can't like I just turn it off. I mean, we're on it now, and I'll stream to Periscope and stuff, but I won't go on there and tweet all the time because it just takes up too much time. And I can leave my phone in the car and feel happy about it for a few minutes and not worry about going to get it because it's not that native to me where it's got to be by my side all the time, and I try and hold on to that where it's not it's not my a pacifier where I got to have it next to me all the time.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting? I think we started off the broadcast, talking about flow state, and this is why I do love podcasts, because it really is kind of bringing back to me the art of conversation. I mean, I can't remember the last time I spoke with one of my friends where a text or a Slack or a DM or something didn't interrupt the flow of our conversation. We're just always like talking. Oh shit, what's this? Blah, blah, blah. Whereas in a podcast, at least for me, I don't know what the people I'm podcasting with are doing. They could be looking at their phones for all I know. But at least for me, I'm paying attention to this thing like the entire time. And that just makes it feel like just so much more like, connection with the person that I'm speaking with, even though, like, sorry, I'm jumping around all over the place, but you're on the other side of the country, but I feel like we've had a conversation with each other, so to me, this is like super cool, with COVID and all this stuff. Yeah, we're separated, but I also think like this is kind of like that little push that like video conferencing needed to become much more normalized, where, at least in my peer group, like none of my friends, like whenever I FaceTime them or video conference them, they're like, why are you video conferencing? Like, just call me, And I'm like, I don't know. Like my fucking phone has this option, when I used to watch the Jetsons, they're video conferencing all the time. I want to do this, none of my friends would ever want to do it. And I would notice like, my younger employees or, we're around a lot of young people in the cannabis industry. Like whenever they would call it, like Eugene Monroe, he would always FaceTime me, but he wouldn't even look in his camera. He would just FaceTime me, put it on his desk, start rolling a joint. But it was so normal to like FaceTime versus just call, So now, me and my friends, we actually do video conference, and yeah, it's pretty cool seeing their old faces.
I think video conferencing is great. When I started working remotely, I started doing a lot of conference calls, and it was impossible to be on a conference call for me because you couldn't see people, you couldn't see facial cues, you couldn't see like when someone was about to say something, like just little things like that you don't get from just voice. So I love that people are now leaning more towards doing the FaceTiming and stuff like that. I think it's you get much more communicated that way.
Totally. Like, I think you were able to see all the pores in my face just then.
High def cameras, man.
Yeah. Well, man, Pete, it was super cool to jump in and speak with you this morning. Like, you asked me what topics I wanted to speak about. I didn't friggin' know, but I feel like we had an awesome conversation this morning. The less I talk about business on podcasts, the more happy I am. I just wanted to shoot the shit, talk about some important stuff. I mean, business is always very, very important, but to me, human connection, making sure we're all okay, spreading that love out. Hopefully there's ripple effects from what we heard, and people could be nicer and cooler to each other, after this. So, and maybe I could come on in the future again and we start talking about some cannabis business.
Yeah, we got to start talking about actually, vaporizers and stuff.
Oh yeah. So I'll leave you with this little cliffhanger. Sorry, I'm not like talking over you like an asshole, but VapeXhale, very much luxury product. Hanu Labs, very much luxury product. We are working on something called Burner Lab, not Burner the rapper, BRNR Lab. This is like 95% of VapeXhale and Hanu Lab performance, but at like 20% the price. So we're really trying to get into this affordable luxury where people that really want to be a baller but are on a budget. You could be a baller on a budget now with Burner Lab stuff. And, we're really trying to take all the great design aesthetics that we have for Hanu Labs and really try to kind of disrupt, the cannabis industry and accessories market where, typically things are $30 and under, but are just, straight from China and made by someone that doesn't smoke weed. now you got a Chinese guy in America that smokes a lot of weed with a factory in China. So we could double down on that and really kick ass.
I love it, man. I love it, man. Seibo, Shen, it's so great to talk to you, man. We got to make sure that MJ Biz show starts happening again so we can hook up again. That's so much fun.
Yeah. Maybe later on the evening, you know, we got some comments here. They want like a dab off, me and you to have a MMA match. Like there's a lot of cool stuff. You know, someone asked how many pull-ups I could do prior to COVID-19. Probably 18 now, probably 10. But you know what? I'm still doing a lot of body weight workouts. So yeah, after this is over.
I'm getting up to 10 myself. I was up to like 13 or 14, and now I'm like I dropped down to like 6.
Well, you know what? Your arms got to work a whole lot harder than mine. You know, I'm kind of like helium over here, so you know my numbers are a little bit higher just due to my weight.
Yeah, and I can't even attempt to do a flip, man. Like those flips are super impressive.
Thank you. I can't do them more. Anytime my Facebook memory comes up and that video's on there, I'm so happy. I'm like, I could share this Facebook memory again, you know, because I don't want to repost that video and just like relive my glory days, right? But if Facebook is prompting me to share a memory, for sure, I'm going to take that opportunity.
That's awesome, man. Oh man. Well, this is great, man. It was. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll definitely do it again, man.
Here, I'll show you what I'm about to puff on. Let's use that HD camera. Woo!
Oh, man, he's making us jealous on the West Coast over there.
This is some runts number 2, and then I also have this Gorilla Glue number 4 sauce that I'm playing around with, you know. So yeah, some yummy terpy goodness here, and hopefully, you know what, we're going to be working with True Leave. Let's get Burner Lab out to True Leave in Florida, and yeah, you know, let's figure out how to make 1 + 1 = 11.
All right, that sounds awesome, man. Cool. On the 11/11 show.
Oh shit. You see, that's what happens when you're in flow. You just say brilliant shit and you don't even know, and you start rhyming like I just did, and that was not on purpose.
I love it, man.
Oh man, Pete, it was great seeing you, dude. Like, let's definitely keep in touch. Give Tom a big, I was gonna say big hug for me. How about a big like air pound for Tom? You know, I miss him a lot too. And yeah, you know, let's get the whole gang back together sooner than later. You know, virtual dab session maybe later on tonight.
That sounds good to me, man. Let's do it. I'm down.
Okay, I'll reach out.
All right. Cool, man.
All right, guys, take care. Bye.
Peace.